Okay.
Okay. However brief that was, I was, really tempted to start out with a 4-minute song, but I was like, I've gotten complaints before, so I made it a 2-minute song. So, how are you? How is your body feeling? Just put in the chat and tell me, how are you feeling in your body? Because when you think of self-nurturing, relaxed, good. When you think of self-nurturing, the first thing is body wisdom, right? Of its different. That's the main reason I wanted us to dance, because we've been sitting down for so long. So, and every bio break, I've gotten up to just move my hips a little bit. So I want to encourage you to, as we begin, pay attention to the way your body's feeling. And you don't even have to keep your videos on, although I would love to see your faces, but allow yourself to stand up and be in your body. Now, some of you may be a little bit out of breath and a little winded, so let's just take a minute and just go, and just really, ah. So one of the things that I want to talk about today, first of all, is when you think of who you're being with your life choices. Do you make your choices based on others, or do you tune into your heart first? And so this is a very important thing to think about. I did a session yesterday called Choices and Opportunities. And one of the things that a lot of the women talked about is like when they chose, they always considered their partner, their children, what their boss would think. And this is one of the things that we didn't discuss in my bio, but fun fact about me is I'm the mother of 6 children, and I homeschooled them for 19 years after giving up my corporate career. So I found out very quickly, even before I left corporate America, that it was super important for me to show up as the best employee and the best mother, to tune in to making choices based on what it is that makes my heart sing. And so how do you make your choices based on making your heart sing? Think about that as I go through these things. So I like to use props. How many of us walk around with these? Well, I mean, probably not like this, but like, who in here walks around wearing a mask? Yeah. As pretty as this is, and as much as people love us when we do that, I want you to think about what it would feel like to remove your mask. So when I talk about making choices based on what makes your heart sing, that's what I'm talking about. If you were to make a choice and it was only about what you love, what gives you joy, how would you choose differently? So think about when we started out dancing, right? It was for the purpose of moving your body. And proportionally, we're more body than we are mind. And yet we spend so much time here. And so this is why I had us moving our bodies, because then, there were some comments. I'm a little bit stiff from sitting, and I'm a little bit, the to-do list just became very short, right? And so our body has wisdom in it. And so sometimes we'll make choices and your shoulders will slump, your heart will beat faster, or you'll stop breathing. Those are signs that this is something that does not light you up. Well, depends, right? Because sometimes your heart beats because you're scared, and sometimes your heart beats because you're excited, right? But more often than not, your heart's beating not because you're lit up. So this is a major sign to pay attention to. I don't really like to use slides, so I'm going to be looking at my notes and going back and forth. And at the end, I will share a few slides. So what I talk about is something called four mind alignment. And that's why I keep talking about body wisdom. So in the four minds that I talk about are your yoni. Has anyone ever heard this word before? Who knows what a yoni is? Okay, we've got one person. All right. So your yoni literally means your sacred space, or it's Sanskrit for vulva, quite honestly, because one of the things that wasn't in my bio is that I'm an authentic traditional Tibetan Tantra certified practitioner. And so I use that as one of the beginning minds because there's so much, this is a portal between worlds, and it's one of the things that we don't often tune into. And that's why I had us moving our hips in the beginning. I'll come back to that. The second mind is your stomach. Does that make sense to anyone? We eat quite often, right? So, but are we making our choices to feed ourselves? Like, do we live to eat, or do we eat to live? The third mind is your heart, right? Now, when I talk about your heart, I'm talking about your emotions. Are you acknowledging them? Are you embracing them? And then the fourth mind is your brain. We already used that way too much, so I'm not going to give too much explanation. So going back to the first mind, right? For example, we sit around a lot. And again, I want to invite you to stand up, and we're not going to dance, but I do want you to kind of move your hips in a circular motion. Okay. And okay. When you move your hips in a circular motion, I want you to pay attention to the different sensations you're having. Okay. Now just move it side to side. This is kind of considered like a half circle. Now try and make a figure 8 with your hips. Okay. Is anyone feeling any kind of opening or different sensation in your body at all? Just and then pick which one you like. Do you like the figure 8? Do you like the circle? Do you like the half circle? Do you feel like a share either in the chat or just with me directly? What are you feeling? You can also come off mute if that feels good. Snapping left to right. Okay.
Like a release or an expansion, if that makes any sense.
Yes. Okay. And when you feel the release and the expansion, do you feel an opening to express yourself with words differently?
I hadn't thought about that.
Okay.
I guess I'm open to it.
Okay. Yeah. So when I say that your hips are like and your yoni is a portal between worlds, when you think about it, you feel free to sit down or continue standing, because we have been sitting quite a bit. So keep standing. I'm totally cool with that. So like think about it, right? Yes, our yoni is a sexual organ. And yes, when you have sex, that creates children, right? And children, they, do come from another realm, actually, right? So in that way, we are a portal between worlds. Secondly, we are spiritual beings in a physical body, right? And so this is the direct connection for women to the divine. And that's where our creativity comes from. A lot of times you'll hear people say that your creative energy and sexual energy is the same. And you may have been like, I don't really connect the dots there. So the dots being connected are all things come from the divine, right? So no matter what your religion is or your spiritual practice, things are coming from someplace else. And so this is the portal through, if we allow that opening. And so my encouragement there is to help you to remove your mask, move your hips more, allow that opening to happen, and increase the flow of energy, increase the flow of blood, right? So one of the other speakers, she's a belly dancer. One of the things that I started doing, 4 of my children I birthed at home, and with my 5th child, I had a lot of problems with my hips. Imagine that, after having 4 people crawl out of them. So I took on belly dancing for birth. And so I just continued that practice, and I've learned all these different variations of moving hips, and which landed me into my current tantric practice. So let's move up to the stomach. The stomach, first of all, I have a background in nutrition as well. So I have a sports nutrition certification, and other is, just like Chinese traditional medicine and all these different things. I need to work on the rhythm. And actually, you don't. Rhythm is yours, whatever it is. Like, there is no beat. The beat is whatever your hips do. So, there is no parameter with that. So in most ancient traditions, right, food was used as medicine, and we've moved away from that now. Currently, we just kind of eat, right? Like who eats because they're hungry or when they feel stomach pains, or yeah. But we don't often think, okay, today I am going to, I have to work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. What is the best high quality breakfast to have so that I have energy all day? Who thinks that? Nobody. Okay. So that is how your stomach can do 2 things. It will give you the energy you need for the day. It will also increase your immunity and help you to make decisions differently. So, for example, let's talk about that marathon day where you're working from 7 to 7. Depending on your body type, some of the foods that I'll throw out may not apply to you. But for the most part, your neurons are going to need some form of healthy fat, right? Which could look like using some coconut oil, some olive oil, or an avocado. You could also get that from seeds and nuts, right? So for your brain, we have walnuts. Some seeds to consider: hemp seeds and chia seeds. They all of these three foods that I just mentioned have omega-3s and omega-6s, and we know that that's great for your brain, right? It also helps for your immune system, and doesn't come from our dirtied oceans, right? We can't always eat fish these days. And then vitamin C. So I love coffee just as much as the next person, but high quality vitamin C is really something that is better to give you energy. And we know it helps with your immune system and it helps with your skin. So some better choices for vitamin C besides the supplement are papaya, mango, kiwi. Yeah. And then you can also look and see what's in season. So there is no, I actually don't know the website for that, but you can Google what are the in-season fruits and vegetables, right? Another thing to look at when you're considering foods to eat are the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. So every May, there is a list that is generated called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. And I talk about that in two of my books. Actually, I talk about it probably in all of my books, but the first book I mentioned it in was Work Out Around My Day, the only health guide that moms need. And you can find any of these things on my website, which all of my books are on my website, which is my name, CordeliaGaffar.com. So when you choose foods according to the energy level that you're going to need for that day, what it is that you're doing that day, then you're automatically changing the way you think and the way you operate. So different. Okay, I think I froze. So I just stopped talking. So I'm going to begin again. I don't know which part of that you didn't hear. But if you choose foods specific to the energy levels that you require in a day, then you are prescribing, right, the right dosages for you to show up differently. You know, a lot of the speakers and even the keynote speaker, the first three speakers, they talked about how to show up, and thank you for that, Terry, and ways to just tune into your values. A lot of times we don't have clarity on what things are and what our values are in a particular situation just because we can't think straight. And so this is another reason why I call the stomach the second mind, because when you are properly prescribing the foods to eat, in accordance to what you're going to do that day, then you will think clearly, you'll be always aligning with your values, and you can go back to what is giving you the ultimate joy, because you're not going to be mindlessly eating just to get something in your face or just to satiate. And I do want to share this one last thing about eating. A lot of times we think that we don't need to eat until we have hunger pains, but there's a better test for that, right? So if you're feeling a little bit tired, drink some water. And if you are fine, like if you feel like you have more energy after drinking water, then it means that you were just simply thirsty. A lot of times we're dehydrated. Now, if you still feel tired after drinking water, you're guilty. If you still feel tired after drinking water, the next thing to do is to make a small plate of food, right? And again, I encourage proteins. If you're a meat eater, meat proteins are great. And there's a proportion size. Like for women, we should have about 2 ounces of meat protein, as opposed to men having 3 ounces of meat protein. And basically that's like 2 small pieces of meat, right? So it wouldn't be like a chicken thigh or a chicken leg or anything like that. But it would be just maybe half of a chicken thigh or something like this, if you eat chicken. And then the other thing is, you want to have some form of carbohydrate. Now, fun fact about eating meat is the easiest way for your body to digest it easily and quickly is to have something that has biotin in it. And so that's like potatoes. And if we go back to what I was talking about with versus the clean 15 and the dirty dozen, sweet potatoes are always on the clean 15. So sweet potatoes, they're not in season all year round, but that's something to consider. Another form of biotin is you can get that in any of the cruciferous vegetables, which would be like bok choy or broccoli. I know everybody loves broccoli, or Brussels sprouts. And so these are other good things. Cilantro is helpful as well to take care of any of the bacteria that might be in different forms of meat. So I'm just, giving you some new ideas or different ideas to consider when it comes to your food choices. And then I always encourage like nuts and seeds in every meal. Not necessarily chia seeds, but hemp seeds they have, like I said, the omega-3s and omega-6s. They're a good source of protein. And so that's something else to consider. So does anyone have any questions about that? Okay.
I do have a quick question.
Mhm.
Well, I can't speak for everybody else, but I know plenty of people, including myself, with dietary restrictions. So, how do you go if you have a dietary restriction? What's the best way to make sure you're getting what you need if you can't necessarily have certain things like maybe dairy or tomatoes because it's causes stomach upset or whatever like that?
There's like a whole world of food out there. So, like, if you can't have dairy, what is it that just to be clear, so what would you prefer to have? Do you still want to have a milk type product or something with the same consistency? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, it's just that, sometimes with, I guess, vegan products, people say, oh, no, this is processed or this has this. So it's like, how do you make a choice that replaces the thing that you want without it still being, I guess, not as good for you? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, so first of all, like, even when it comes to like vegan foods, like there are vegan processed foods like tofurkey or whatever that is. Like, I don't do those kind of things, but like you can always have like I was encouraging sweet potatoes or what is another good source? I mean, you could use anything that's nut based if you don't have a nut allergy, or you could use like coconut milk or coconut because this is like fruit based. A coconut is fruit actually. So it really depends. And I actually do have an assessment for that I take my clients through. So if you want to know for your specific body type, what kind of foods to eat, that's like an assessment that I could give you and you could work it out and figure out what it is for you. Yeah. But there's also a resource that I want to share with everyone. It's whfoods.org. And that's just a great place to find out the nutritional value of the foods that you do eat and other, other food. Like you can type in biotin, right? And if you want to look for something that has that protein in it. So
repeating that website, Dr. Cordelia, I can drop it in the chat.
Okay, I think Terry also put it in the chat. It's whfoods.org. So that's I've actually used that one for 20 more than 20 years. Because as much as, I've always been a foodie, and I pretty much grew up eating pretty well, simply because my mom actually was a renal patient. So we had to modify our diet before it was cool, because there was a lot of, she couldn't eat tomatoes. And there was a lot of food she couldn't eat. So, but what I originally started using 20 years ago to heal my postpartum depression was nutrition, because I didn't want to take any antidepressants. And so that's how I, found out about different forms of movement. I started doing Qigong, eccentrics, Tai Chi. I wasn't really into yoga in the beginning. I was more like a Pilates person, and I did a lot of weightlifting and stuff like that. I still do that. But that's how I originally fell into using food as medicine, was to cure my postpartum depression. And so now anytime anything comes up, I'm always looking for what are the foods that I can use. And so this is why I've really used this website, whfoods.org. So we're going to move into our heart mind. So one thing I've noticed with the women I work with, right? I help women to create sustainable systems of self-nurturing so that they can discover their ultimate joy. And it always comes back to, a lot of women did not have nurturing mothers, so they may not have that as a point of reference, right? They may have had a nurturing community member or grandmother or father. And so I as much as I would love to say, think about the way your mother, was with you, that's not really the case for many of the women that I work with. And that's why they tend to operate in their masculine, which in this case means they disconnect from their emotions. So a very important heart mind is the heart. And this is where you get an opportunity to acknowledge your emotions, the way you're feeling. And there have we've identified now like 88 emotions. I know most of us think of happy, sad, mad, right? But there are 88 nuances of the way we experience emotions. And so with this, emotions only last like 60 to 90 seconds. It's just a chemical response in the brain. And one of my favorite authors on the topic of emotions is Dr. Candace Pert, P-E-R-T. So she actually wrote a book called Molecules of Emotions, where she says this. And so after those 60 or 90 seconds, it creates a feeling in your heart. And that's usually what gives us the thoughts that we think, and then we take actions that way. But when we use our heart for the purpose it was created, right? When we have that feeling, rather than pushing it down, suppressing it, or anything like that, welcoming it as a form of information. That's all it is, right? So just like, and this may be a leap for some of you, but many of us are on prescription drugs, right? So there are receptors in the brain that receive the benefits of those drugs. It's the same thing when it comes to your emotions. There are receptors in our body, like there's neurons all over our body accepting the benefit of that information when we don't suppress it. So when you allow yourself to feel anger, I'm going to talk about anger because, many of the women I work with are executives, and they shut themselves down at work, like Alethea talked about, right? They're the queens at home, but they shut themselves down in the office, and they're angry about that choice. Well, when you have anger, that is a sign that your values are being rubbed up against, that something that you stand for is being diminished. And so this actually creates an opportunity, when you don't push that anger down, for you to discover ways to be a stand for that, to enroll people in what you value. And so the heart mind is, I would say, a very, very important way to help you to communicate better. And so I'm wondering, like, has anyone in here, when you felt angry, did you feel shame about being angry? Yeah. And it's the most delightful, I would say, of the emotions that we can experience as women, because what a gift for us to be angry. It's the greatest thing on earth, because here's the flip side of anger, right? Anger gives us clarity, and it gives us, yeah, we've been told that it's bad, but anger gives us clarity, and it gives us an opportunity to show our compassion for humans, right? Because why are you angry? Because someone is not getting something that they require. Why? What are some of the reasons that you get angry? Anyone willing to share? You can put it in the chat, or you can just say it.
Not feeling heard.
Not feeling heard. Yeah. And, but when boundaries are violated, yeah, that is a very common one. And so the boundaries are usually violated. It's like a circle, right? Because guess what? We're doing this. Because who's going to ever know your boundaries if you don't share them, right? You're too busy trying to placate. But don't do that. Just say it like it is, right? And that doesn't make you an angry woman. That makes you a very clear, communicative human being. And that's an opportunity that's available to us in every interaction and every conversation. So, use the power of your heart by expressing exactly the way you feel, and paying attention to the data that it's giving you. Our bodies are like a fine, we are the ultimate computer, right? And that's why I've decided to break down the body into different minds, so people can see we have all these different operating centers, right? So think of them like different softwares, right? So we have our nervous system would be the operating system, and then we have different softwares for different things. But somehow we overuse the brain. And so if you look at your body, right? From your shoulder down to your feet, there's more of you than there is of your brain. And so a lot of times we get headaches because we spend more time thinking than we allow our bodies to give us the wisdom. What if we allowed our yoni to speak to our heart, to speak to our heart and our stomach, to speak to our heart, and we had all that conversation going on, and then it gave words for us to speak, and we had that through flowing, I would say the energetic flow of reciprocity within, so that we can allow the energetic flow of reciprocity outside in our world, in our lives, and in the things that we do. And so what I'm talking about is a receiving of information throughout the body, and an understanding of the data and the alerts that are happening on a regular basis, so that when we speak, we don't self-edit. And so that when we speak on our values, and we're a stand for the things that we believe in, and we're a stand for others. So my invitation to you is to consider nurturing all these different parts of you, so that you can create sustainable practices of nurturing for your ultimate joy. And so let's see. I'm just going to look really quickly at my notes and see if there's anything that I didn't share. Yeah. So let me look at brain dominates. We've often been taught to control emotion and not integrate those feelings. Plus, generationally, is expressing feelings. The yoni is not to be okay. Yeah, Carla. The yoni is the most interesting mind. And so I'm just gonna share a quick story before I invite you to ask me questions. So I chose to study Tantra after getting a divorce in 2021. So in 2020, I separated from my husband after 20 years. And I've been in personal development since my parents died when I was 25 years old. I'm the bonus baby. So my dad was 61 when I was born. My mom was 40. So they died when I went to, when I started my life, basically. And so to, overcome my grief, that's when I really leaned into personal development and, using food as medicine and all those things. And so, for years, right? Like for 25 years, I've been reading all the books, going to all the conferences, workshops, whatever. But there's one thing that I never paid any attention to, and that was my sexual well-being. And, this has come up in like almost everything that I've studied about emotions and about food is like your sexual health is part of your total well-being. And so I wanted to explore that more. And so that's how I got into Tantra. And I found out it's really a spiritual practice and it does help with your total well-being. And there's more. Your yoni does speak. And we don't pay attention, right? Like, even when I was married, and for those of you who are married, you may have experienced this. There are a lot of times when you don't want to have sex, right? And you can, like your body will respond in a certain way, but you just do it anyway, right? Or maybe you don't want to be touched, or maybe you do want to be touched, but either way, whether you do or you don't speak up for it either way. So these are small infractions that happen over a period of time, and your body and your nervous system remembers that. And eventually this leads to emotional eating, breast cancer, fibroids, diabetes, aneurysms, and we don't take it into consideration. So, it's something that you want to pay attention to. And I go a lot more in depth with this in my online membership. I have something called the Replenish Me Tribe, and I talk more deeply about the 4 minds when we meet monthly. And so just tuning in to listening to your body, listening to your yoni in particular, considering the energy that you require by, choosing your food and dosages, and by the types of food to eat and things like that are so very important. So I'm going to kind of summarize. I feel like I jumped around a lot and you may not have followed the flow. So I'm just going to summarize and close up with this, right? So to create your, sustainable practices of self-nurturing, you want to tune into your body wisdom using your 4 minds. The 4 minds are your yoni, your sacred space, your stomach, your heart, and then your brain. And do it in that order. Pay attention to the data that your body's giving you, and act appropriately. And I'm going to share just one slide so you can connect with me. And there it is. Let me close my, can you see that slide? So if you, yeah. And that will, connect with me on social media. So all my social media is Cordelia Gaffar. My website's cordeliagaffar.com. My YouTube channel is Cordelia Gaffar. And I have a podcast called The Free to Be Show, which can also, every week I have conversations about ways to create sustainable systems of self-nurturing. So the month of April, I'm talking about playing. And so yesterday, I actually had a conversation about playing, creating wealth building practices. So, and next week, I'm going to be talking about this, creating body wisdom practices. So with that, I'm going to close out and see if anyone has any questions.
I have a quick question. Are the body minds similar to like chakras?
That's a great question. Yes. And I specifically stayed away from that word because so like in my, no, it's totally fine. So the reason why I stayed away from the word is because like in my last book, Detached Love, I talk about the more widely known chakra system, which there's 7 chakras, right? But what I'm sharing with you today is kind of like a compilation of, there's like 108 chakra systems. I don't know if you guys know that. And in Tibetan Tantra, that's a different chakra system altogether. So to avoid using the word chakra or causing any confusion, I just kind of consolidated them. So yeah, you recognized that. So yeah, for those of you who are familiar with the chakra system, so when I talk about stomach, that would be like solar plexus and your sacral chakra. Yoni would be the root chakra. And then I guess the heart is the heart chakra, is the same, right? And then the crown chakra and the third eye for brain. So yeah. Thank you for that question. Do your children think about the path you're on? What do my children? Oh, they love it, So I have 4 daughters and 2 sons. My oldest is 22. And so I actually use a lot of this information with my girls in particular. I'm teaching them authentic Tibetan Tantra, and 2 of my daughters work for my company. My oldest one and my youngest one, who's going to be 9 next month. So, yeah. Thank you for that question, Carla. What do you think about the path I'm on? I have a question for anyone. Has anyone ever heard of Tantra? I guess I used a word and I didn't even ask if you're familiar with it. Okay. All right. And again, I encourage you to always move your hips, throughout the day. This is a practice that I always share, is like at the end of every hour, like put an alarm on for like the last 5 minutes, get up, and move something. You can move your hips. I also encourage moving shoulders, because in the beginning, I want to say like in 2017, when I first started doing this, it was called emotional release. And so we hold a lot of other people's energy on our shoulders. So, if you don't move your hips, move your shoulders throughout the day, or just notice where your shoulders are. Are they relaxed, or are you feeling like, humped over? Just like pay attention to that. And I'm not one of those, you have to have a certain amount of water or anything like that. Again, if you feel tired, drink water. That's always the test. And fresh air. One of my practices is to just go out, even if it's cold or there's snow or ice. I go outside, I take off my shoes and I touch the ground, and I take off my hat and I allow the sun to touch me, because even if there are clouds, there's always sun. So this is the best form of vitamin C. And then there's always the right, that breath that I shared with you earlier, because that can go a lot of different ways, and you can do that in public too. My kids, they do get embarrassed about that. So go ahead.
I want to say that this makes me think, just no intention on my parents' part to not do the right thing, but the brain was always how you think, control your emotions, don't express your sexuality, I think resulted in me eating a lot more food. In other words, I think there's a big tie-in that I've never really thought of, even with all the counseling I've had, about how, and I am working on this sort of for myself at this point in my life, how I'm not aligned. I live in a mask because I do suppress those parts of me that were not really respected or talked to as a child. And I think it's just sort of carried along through my life. And I don't know, I'm curious, I talk about this generationally because when I'm in the this particular Toastmasters club, I see all these women expressing so much of who I think they really are. I mean, I'm not saying there's not a touch of imposter syndrome, but I really do think it. And this is just it just sort of clicked with me. And I've known about chakras, I've known about this, but somehow it really clicked with me that how much my eating is tied into my not expressing my authentic self, and also having a lot of fear about that authentic self and about anger and all those things that go along with it. So I really appreciate what you've been sharing today.
Thank you. And I acknowledge you for being in that awareness for yourself, because there's definitely a connection that I'm hearing you share with you self-medicating with food, right? In exchange for speaking your truth, in exchange for feeling your emotions, in exchange for, expressing yourself more fully in your sexuality. So, and now that you're aware of this, your whole world of choices and opportunities has just opened.
It's open, but it is a lot of sludge to get through to get out of it. It really is. I mean, I talk about this, but I'm really working on that. And it's like shoulda, coulda, woulda, but I wish I had had this awareness in my younger years, because I think how powerful I am and didn't live that. Even though I did a lot of great things, I'm not saying I didn't, but there's just some sort of thing that's been blossoming in me, and this just aligns really with it. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'd love to talk to you more about that. So feel free to connect with me. If there's a thing that I ask people to do is to send me a long loopy email or crazy email, like, what's your story? Right. And you can just send that to me at hello@cordeliagaffar.com. But that's if you already took the screenshot of my my high, then it's there. But yeah, and as long as you have breath in your body and your heart is still beating, you're still doing amazing things in the world, right?
Mhm.
So this is just the beginning, and you can still, your sexuality is always going to be a part of you. That, like, in nursing homes, there's like a whole racket. You know about that, right? Have you
High
heard of it?
STDs in nursing homes.
Yes. Because they're like, oh, we can't
Not
get
quite there
pregnant
yet,
now.
but maybe I'm looking forward to that. I don't know.
You don't have to wait to get to a nursing home to be part of an orgy. No, I'm just kidding. No, so to be and no, I'm not encouraging that at all. That's what I love about authentic Tibetan Tantra, and the distinction between that and Neo Tantra is that it is lineage based, and the people that run the school are they're married. It's a married couple. All the instructors are married couples, so because the idea when you choose to have a partner is that you're connecting your sacred space with his sacred space for divine union, right? And through that co-creation, you can create more energetic reciprocity in the world for the elevation of all souls. And that's really what it's about. It's not what you hear of in Neo Tantra of just, it's diminished completely down to just being an act of sexuality, when in fact our sexuality is our spirituality, right? So we connect with each other through this realm of loving, and the loving and the intimacy begins within. And so when I talk about ultimate joy, I'm talking about the ultimate joy, like we were born as kids, right? Dr. Smith was talking about tiny humans, right? So we are born with ultimate joy. We don't think about things, to prevent ourselves from it having pleasure. But then ultimate joy as an adult is like the blissful state of enlightenment that you can get through your sexuality. So